Welcome back, everyone. Today we've got another interesting guest. Her name is Michele, and Michele, she's a coach. Now, I'm gonna ask Michele to introduce herself because normally I do a bad job. So, Michele, the first question is if you were to meet a stranger, how would you introduce yourself to a stranger?
Yeah, that's a tricky one, isn't it? It's the elevator pitch. How would I introduce myself? Well, if I was to introduce myself as the person I am Michele, the mum. I am Michele, the colleague. I am Michele, the partner, the wife. But fundamentally, I'm a sum of my parts, and I think over the years, have introduced myself in many professional settings as the thing I needed to be in that moment. Whether that was, hi, I'm Michele, I'm a marketing specialist, or hi, I'm Michele, I work in organisational development. And over the years, I've kind of thought, well, what is it at my core that really interests me and motivates me? It's actually, without sounding trite, it's people. And so if I was to introduce myself now, I'd like to think I was Michele, a people person, first and foremost. And I think the career path that I have taken speaks to that as well now.
And the career path you've taken, part of your career path is that of a coach.
I am a coach, yes. Yeah.
And for people who don't know what a coach is, would you be able to explain to someone what a coach is?
Yeah, of course. So coaching takes many, many forms. To boil it right down, I'm a business and personal coach. That's that's what it says on my certificate, my qualifications. What does that really mean? It means that I am somebody that gives people space and time to do really good thinking about the things that may or may not be limiting them, challenging them, keeping them awake at night, getting in their way. And I think about coaching as somebody who comes alongside and somebody who walks a path with an individual to help them figure things out that perhaps they haven't had the bandwidth to get to on their own. And so coaching, it's really easy to take the textbook definition of coaching as it's about transformation. It's about personal progression and fulfilling one's potential and all those lovely things. And it absolutely is about that. But for me, it is about walking alongside someone and helping them to realise that actually they have way more potential than they thought they had, and how they can turn that into something meaningful.
I really love that definition of walking alongside someone and helping them realize their full potential.
Yeah.
I think that when the first time I came in contact with coaching, it was interesting to note the differences between a coach and a mentor because they are different.
They are.
But at the beginning, when I came in contact with it, I thought of them as the same because I could look at a mentor and I could say they would walk alongside you to help figure out that transformation as well. So, what do you think about that?
It's just a different way of doing it. So both mentors and coaches, I believe, walk alongside someone to help them figure something out. But the way that we do that is different. I am a mentor as well. In my mentoring capacity, my mode of walking alongside that person is to really understand from them what it is they need from me, and if my experience speaks into that, then to share that with them. So for example, if somebody was thinking that perhaps they wanted to step into the world of coaching, that's an invitation to me directly from them to share my experience of the path that I followed to become a coach, for example. And I might share with them the qualifications I pursued, the path I went down, the training provider I did my qualifications through, etc., etc. With coaching, it's not about me walking alongside them so that they can walk in my shoes. It's about me enabling them to think about what walking through their path looks like in their own shoes. Somebody that I'm mentoring is getting the benefit of my experience, potentially. Somebody I'm coaching is getting the benefit of me giving them time, space to think, and offering them some useful techniques and tools along the way that's going to elicit that thinking for them. so that they come to their own conclusions. And that could be wildly different to a conclusion that I might come to. But something that suits me won't necessarily be the outcome that is going to be great for them. So that, for me, that's the fundamental difference.
Michele, before we actually continue with more of this interesting story about coaching and what it means, what do you want people to take away from this episode?
I would love it for anyone that's thinking about potentially exploring a path into becoming a coach or learning some of the fundamental skills that enable them to have better conversations with people. Because essentially, coaching is about communication between, whether it's between two people or an individual in a group. I'd like people to perhaps have learned that there's a different way to have a better conversation, a conversation that helps somebody to reach a better outcome. And there are many ways to become qualified if you want to go down the professional route. The other would be that I would love for people to realise actually that they have way more potential than they think they have. There will be other options to a problem that's presenting that they haven't thought of, and that actually it's because of the world that we're in and the way the world is constructed around us. We have so many tools at our disposal to make things so much easier on every front. And yet the one thing that we don't really have, which is incumbent within all of us, is time to think about things and to make better decisions. So, and to think about a person's own personal development and potential in a completely different way to that they may have previously. So even if all we get to at the end of this conversation that is provoke somebody to think about something in a slightly different way, or to tackle or challenge something in a slightly different way, that would be great.
With that being said, I had never come in contact with coaching until I met, obviously, you. And one of the first things that sort of came to mind after I was introduced to coaching was that, and please tell me if this is actually false, but I don't think people actually get that much access to this idea of coaching. I think I see coaching as, or at least back then, I saw coaching as, right, coaching is only available to people who are probably high-level individuals, CEOs, founders, investment people, or even obviously politicians who might need a bit some coaching in that space. But obviously, there's obviously a lot more spaces I'm missing out on. Given that, why would coaching be useful to everyone?
That's a really good question. I think you're absolutely right that historically coaching is something that was very much limited to board level executives, and I think in a lot of companies that level of, or what was considered to be the next level of talent coming through. So it was the next generation of leaders. And I think it's the reason that it's useful to everyone is because problem solving, decision making, challenges, career dilemmas, all of those things are not limited to people at the top of their game or the upper echelons of their career path. And I think it's crazy to think that it should only be available to people at that level, because actually your future leaders, for example, they have to start somewhere. So why not put in place those tools and those things we know can help an individual develop from a much earlier stage in their career, provide that early and give them the opportunity a lot earlier. But like I said, everybody universally has things to figure out. So to my mind, if an organisation can make coaching available universally to everybody, that can only be a benefit. And if you think about the nature of leadership, and that potentially leadership can literally come from anywhere, by not empowering people in that way, we're probably divesting ourselves of some potential leaders that perhaps we would just overlook.
As you were saying that, the next thing that came up into my mind, that's sort of been a recurrent theme sometimes, is okay, you've got coaching available. You as an organization, you make coaching available to the people you work with. How would someone know that coaching is beneficial to them. Say, for example, I have a work situation that I'm not sure how to move forward with, or say I have some aspirations that I don't necessarily know what to do with, or say, for example, I don't even have any of those, but my company has made coaching available to me. How would I know to even think of, oh, let's give coaching a go?
Yeah, I think first of all, it's about the company actually making that provision very obvious, and raising the profile of coaching as something that can be beneficial to anybody. The organisation that you and I both work for, we have made coaching universal, and I've been running a coaching program there for 10 years this year, actually. And it took time. It took time to gain some traction, because one of the things I found really early on was that people conflated coaching with something punitive, that it was actually it was an intervention, that if you weren't performing in some way, that you would be offered a coach to help you perform because you weren't doing very well. That was never the case, but that was people's assumption. And so actually, when I started out as a coach within the organisation that we work for, I found that people were really secretive about working with a coach, because they felt like they were being encouraged to work with a coach because they were doing something wrong. And actually, I think that's where a lot of companies have gone wrong in the past with coaching, that they bring in coaches as a remedial thing. So this person's underperforming, therefore the manager goes and talks to HR, and they bring in a coach and they insist that person works with a coach to improve their performance. Now, the problem with that is that coaching works when someone comes to it themselves, because it isn't for everybody. And I think in order for people to dispel the myth that it's punitive, and by making it universal to everybody, and by making sure that it is couched in a way that it's supportive, it's a space, it is a place to just do some really good thinking. It isn't about underperformance necessarily. It might be that that person's received some feedback that perhaps they could be performing better, and that coaching could support them. But actually telling somebody you're going to have a coach and you're going to do this and the outcome needs to look like this, that is not going to get the result that those managers or those companies expect. And I think in order to invite people into that space, the company and the coaches within that company need to promote it and champion it and talk about it in terms of the things that it enables. And for me, coaching isn't just about transformation, which is often the label that gets stuck on it, but it's about enabling people. And sometimes you don't know what you don't know. And so when somebody might suggest, and I know this happens all the time, if someone suggests, oh, you might want to work with a coach, I've come across plenty of people who are like, I have no idea what you're talking about. And actually it's almost that word of mouth, that the person sitting next to you goes, oh, I work with a coach and it's been really helpful for X. And then that person goes, well, actually, that could be something that's useful for me. But one of the things that we do as part of our induction program at Maiden is we do a coaching and mentoring induction, so that every person that joins the business knows that they can have a coach to work with, they can have a mentor to work with, and actually those things are not mutually exclusive. They can go together really, really beautifully, and therefore we introduce it straight away within the first 2 weeks of somebody joining the organisation. This is available. This is what you might choose to use it for. This is what's kind of in scope of a coaching conversation. These are the things that are not. If that sounds like it could be helpful to you, come and have a tryout session. Come and just we call it a chemistry session. Come and have a session with one of our coaches, almost try before you buy. See what you think. Is it what you thought it was going to be? Can you see how it could be beneficial to you? And if so, carry on with it. If it's not for you, it's fine. We don't make it mandatory, because I firmly believe that it's something that you need to step towards rather than it being pushed onto you.
You've mentioned it a couple of times, and I really like this idea of enabling people to reach their full potential, or enabling them to have that transformation. I really love the sound of it, and I think from my experience with coaching, there have been moments where that happened, and it was really good that when it happened. And what's been really interesting for me is to see, well, how does that actually work? And would you be able to sort of like talk with me about, you've on one side you've got the coach, and on the other side you've got, I guess you call him the coachee, the person who's being coached, or the person who's coming along for a coaching session. From the perspective of the coach, I don't know. Basically what I'm trying to do here is I'm looking to see what are the things you're doing as a coach, and what are the things that are expected. Not necessarily expected. That's a big word. That's in my head is like commitment. But what are the things that a coachee would do in a coaching session as opposed to a coach in the same environment? Start wherever you want. But I'm interested in like sort of like that dynamic of what does actually happen in a coaching conversation or in a coaching session from both sides.
Yeah, it's first and foremost, it's a partnership. So there's no hierarchy in that relationship. That space, it's really easy to talk about safe space, isn't it? That, oh, safe space, say what you want. Well, actually, I fundamentally disagree that a space is safe until you have really made it so. And I think one of the fundamental things about a safe space to have a good conversation, which is essentially what coaching is, it is still a conversation. It's about trust, and it's about building trust. So I always will start there. So say, for example, you and I are meeting for the first time in a coaching scenario. I know you are working with a coach already, but just imagine. So you're stepping into a coaching session with me. You don't know me. I don't know you. As a coach, my job is to come to that conversation with no judgment, no bias, no prejudice around what I think I'm about to hear or not. And actually, that's one of the reasons why in the coaching program that I run, I always encourage our coaches and our coachees to come from different parts of the business, because that limits, or at least reduces, the amount of bias that the coach steps into a conversation with. Because, for example, I know a lot less about your world as a software developer and your day-to-day challenges and the things you experience than I would perhaps working with a colleague in organisational development, for example. And I need you to know, for you to be able to have a really creative, expansive thinking space, it needs to be a safe one. So one of the things that I will do straight away is set up the conversation around our expectations of each other. So you could expect of me as a coach that I will come with no prejudice about what I'm hearing. You can expect of me that I will come as a compassionate challenger. So I'm not there to just collude and confirm an echo chamber for you. I'm there to hold the mirror up and to ask you questions that will provoke, but in a completely non-judgmental way. I am there to hold that conversation with a huge amount of respect and confidentiality. So I will always set that space up so that you understand that what you share with me isn't going to go back to your team, isn't going to go back to your line manager, isn't going to go anywhere else. It's just going to stay between us. Unless a red flag was raised, which is a different thing, but if there was an issue. But first and foremost, in terms of expectations of each other, I think it's really important that you clarify that straight off.
And could I attack your argument for a second?
Of course.
So you said in order to have a good coaching relationship, you need trust.
Yeah.
And you mentioned that you would come in with, you'd come in with no prejudice. You'd come in without judging that person. You wouldn't judge them within the conversation. You would hold up a mirror to them and always speak the truth as you see it. I guess the thing that doesn't fully connect and I think the thing that's the hardest as well when it comes with trust is how do you, because say you and I have never met,
Yeah.
and say I'm a person who doesn't really trust to open up as easily as some others.
Yeah.
How do you, it's easy for you to sit there and say, I'm not gonna come here and I'm not gonna judge you. I'm not gonna take away everything you've said and share it with my friends. Because at the end of the day, I could turn around and say, I don't know that. You're probably saying that to me so I can open up for reasons, but I don't know that. So it's coming back to the trust. How do you take those words and actually give them so much meaning that the person who you're trying, I guess, help, or the person you're trying to work with understands that you are trustworthy?
Yeah, that's a great question. Part of it is in the coaching process in and of itself. So I'm not just going to say, this is what I'm going to do to make this a safe space for you. I would ask you directly, when we talk about a safe space, what does that look and feel like to you? How do you recognize safety in a conversation? What does that mean to you? Because it's going to mean something different to everybody else. What do you need from me to feel like you can speak freely, that you can think expansively? How can I come alongside you in such a way that makes that possible for you? So, for example, I work with coaches who are autistic, for example, and those people have shared with me that sometimes actually sitting opposite one another and maintaining eye contact for the whole time is really uncomfortable. And so for me, it's really important early on to be able to establish what offers you that degree of comfort that means that you can still really access the coaching process in terms of the thinking space and the supportive, that me coming alongside and asking questions, really hearing you, using some of those tools and techniques. So we walk alongside each other. We don't sit opposite each other. I can think of one person who I coach who has asked that when we do coaching, we are outside, we walk side by side. For them, that is a much more comfortable space. So it's really about establishing really early on, what does that look like for the individual? I'm not there to turn up and go, this is how we do it. The first thing I will do is help them to understand what the coaching process is if they have come to the coaching process not really understanding what that is. But then it's very much about, this isn't about me, this is about you and what you need. Does that?
I think that answers my question. But at the same time, at the same time, something you said was you would ask them, well, what does a safe space or a trusting space look like for you? And the first thing that came to my mind was, I don't know. So, well, how do you help those people then navigate? Well, this is how it could look like. How, like,
Yeah.
I'm sure you probably like have had some people who have said, I don't know. I would be one of that. I'd be like, I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I think I would want to understand, first of all, what does the physical environment look like? So is it that, do you prefer to work within the office building? Or would you prefer that we go outside? That's giving someone a clear choice of actually where they feel they would like to try to have a conversation. It might be that we talk about the scope of challenge, for example. So some people that I work with or have worked with in the past, certainly they are up for being challenged. You know, because we've contracted for that. So right up front in that first session together, you know, I will always share, I'm not here to be an echo chamber, but I am here to challenge what I'm hearing if I think it's necessary and appropriate in service of you moving forward in some way. Now, for some people, that's absolutely fine. It's like, bring the challenge. If you think that there's something I'm not seeing, point it out to me. Provoke me, ask me some challenging questions. I'm fine with that. Other people do not want that. And actually, it's about starting really slowly. So it might be about just reflecting back what I think I'm hearing and just checking in. So what I think I've heard is this. It gives that person the opportunity to say, actually, no, that isn't it. Or actually, that's kind of on the right track, but there's something not quite right about that. And then that gives me the opportunity to work with them to find out and dig a little bit deeper about actually what is at the heart of what's going on. So there are many, many ways to do it. But I think the most important and fundamental way is not making any assumptions about what the person opposite you needs, but it's about asking them. And it takes time. So for some people, they can come to one coaching session, they can work through something, great, done, off they go. For others, it is a process. And I've certainly worked with people that it has taken many sessions to get to a point where we've got to the heart of the matter, because you need to build that trust. And you build that trust through doing the things you said you'd do and not breaking that. So for example, if I've said to somebody, I'm going to keep it confidential, I'm not going to break that. And that's going to remain confidential with us. And it's through those actions that people start to be able to see, actually, I can trust this person, I can open up more, and I have seen it happen many times.
So you've covered the trust
Yeah.
point. And the next thing you've said, which has now left my mind, has X'd in my mind. So you said, so we've covered trust. The second thing I wanted to cover that you've just mentioned is understanding what they need from the space you're trying to create. How do you go around figuring that out as a coach?
Well, again, if it's about the space, if it's about the type of conversation, it is asking. It's asking those questions that enable that person to share what feels good for them. Repeat the question.
Yeah, absolutely. So we covered the trust point.
Yeah.
And the next thing you also said was figuring out, or the question that I was asking is, how do you figure out, as a coach, how do you figure out what they need from the space? Not necessarily from like creating the safe space, but what do they need from you?
Yeah, brilliant, thank you. So the amount of times that I have had somebody new come into a coaching session and say, I don't know really why I'm here, I just know I need something. Most people haven't got a plan for coaching. Some do. Some will come and say, I've set these goals for myself, set these objectives. I now need some support to be accountable to myself to get it done. Work with that person, very clear what they're trying to achieve. We work through that together, and hopefully after a couple of sessions or a few sessions, they'll go away with that happy. For others, it is, I don't know what I need. And in that moment, I need to give them the space to and the support to think about why they're there. And it might be that I can start by just teasing out a little bit about what's going on for them right now. What is the context or the environment that they're working in? What does their ecosystem look like? What does their network around them look like? So I can understand a little bit better the environment that they're a part of. So what are the challenges that they're experiencing? I'd ask them to tell me a little bit just about themselves. What are they willing to share? I'm never going to push somebody to share things with me that they don't want to. And that is absolutely fundamental to a coaching conversation. You never push somebody to share information with you that they're not happy to. Because some people, as I've discovered through coaching, are people pleasers. They want to make you happy as the coach. And that's not what I'm there for. So I need to help those people to think about what they're happy to share with me, how their context looks, feels, how they're experiencing the place that they're in right there and then, and to think about something brought you here. And it might be the culmination of years of something building, but you can't articulate what it is. They can't articulate what has actually brought them to a head, to that moment. But quite often, what I've discovered through those conversations is that usually people they need to make a decision. They've been thinking about something for a long time. There's something bubbling up and it won't go away, but it's on the periphery of their consciousness. They're not actually really able to necessarily articulate what it is, but something is there. And they know something's there. And often what it boils down to is that they literally haven't had the time or the headspace to bring it into their consciousness and actually think about the thing. And what I tend to find is that over a couple of sessions, even if someone's saying, I honestly don't know why I'm here, but I just feel I need to be, little by little, you can strip things back with that person till you get to the heart of what it is that has brought them there in the first place. And it's then that you often get those, now I see it moment. That isn't the transformational piece, but that is the recognition of the thing that's been very nebulous, vague in the greyness and the chaos of our lives. You bring it into that consciousness and then it becomes something that they can work on.
Okay, so we've covered trust. We've covered the how you would go about is that word, unsurfacing? Uncovering. We've covered the uncovering of how or why they are there, or how you might help them if they have no idea why they're there. What's next?
Okay, so you continue really in uncovering, I would say, at that point. So I have been working with somebody recently who has just reached a point in their career where they're really conflicted about where they go next, and they couldn't really articulate why that was, but there was just something that they felt within them wasn't really being served, that they perhaps were missing their potential, they were missing something about their purpose. And so I would want to work with that person it's almost like peeling back layers of an onion, because often what someone presents with in the early stages of a coaching partnership it's the more superficial stuff. It's more the symptomatic. And what you want to gradually do is peel those layers away so that they're not just working on symptoms and the things that are bothering them day to day. You want to get to the heart of the thing that they want to change or they want to develop. And so I will spend time listening, really. Tell me your story. Tell me what is going on for you right now. What feels important? What matters? What does purpose look like to you? What are your values? Just helping someone reconnect with the things that are important to them can actually be really powerful in helping somebody to figure out where they might go next. And it was actually a similar experience to that brought me fully into coaching, that made me choose it as a career. So I've had personal experience of that, of kind of going, something feels off. I can't quite articulate it, and superficially it would have been, it's this and therefore I'll do that. And actually for me it required a coach to work with me to help me peel back those layers to get to the heart of why I couldn't take action on something. And once I'd uncovered that, then I was able to go forward. So those early conversations are very much about uncovering gradually with somebody the things that are on their mind, making sure that perhaps we're not dealing with symptoms, we are actually getting to the heart of something, and then you can put with them in place a plan for them to go forward.
You say it right there. You are listening to the things they're saying to you, and you're peeling back the onion so that you can little by little uncover the heart of the matter. As a coach, from what you're saying, you're not helping just one person. You're not coaching one person. You're coaching probably, if I was to guess, probably more than 10 people, right?
Yeah.
And the point I'm trying to make here is, because you're doing this for so many people, how do you listen? How do you really listen? As you're talking, my mind might go, oh, you've said something interesting there, I want to ask about that. And then I might go, the early episodes I was doing, I was like, oh, what's the next question I want to ask them? And then I lose obviously everything. I just block out everything you're saying, and I'm just gonna like think about the question I'm asking next. And it's a journey. It's been a journey trying to like block that and focus on the things you're actually saying, and then figure out where I could go next.
Yeah.
Well, as a coach, it's much harder because this is a relaxed environment, right? But in a coaching environment, I would assume that, right, this person is giving you so much information, and maybe not of it, maybe 80% of it is not useful, but the 20% you have to really listen out for. And
Yeah.
the point I'm trying to make here is not only do you have to learn how to listen, but you're putting so much load on probably your brain just by listening and taking and absorbing everything they're saying. So how do you, as a coach, how do you deal with that? Because I'm sure it's probably like one of the hardest things, right?
Yes. And I think what you've just described with your experience of learning to be a podcast host is very similar to my experience in my early days of coaching, because I would be sitting there in a coaching conversation doing my best to listen and going, I need to ask a powerful question. I have to ask something really incisive and important. And it was hard. It was really hard, because I think what people fail to understand about coaching is there is a skill to it. It is not simply a case of listening in the way that you might to a mate in the pub. Yeah, that is a really important interaction between two people. It's so important, but it is a different dynamic. I think preparation is part of it. So what I did learn quite early on was that before I went into a coaching session, I needed a bit of headspace, even if it was just 5 minutes, because the pace at which we work and the context switching that we do in any given day, what I found quite early on was I would go into a coaching session and my brain would still be worrying about all the other things I'd just been thinking about in that meeting previously. So I learned to give myself a little bit of headspace before I stepped, so just 5 minutes before I stepped into a coaching session. But it is really hard at first when you're learning to do that, because suddenly you're labelled, you are a coach. And suddenly that comes with what feels like and is quite a lot of responsibility, because you're holding somebody in that space and you don't know what's going to come. So I've stepped into coaching spaces before, and I have been met with something I did not expect many times, because we're human, aren't we? And we don't come to work and just dump our humanity at the door and become a work-oriented robot. We come with all our emotions. We come with our anxieties, our fears, our hopes, our dreams, our joy, our ambitions, all those things. So there's this melting pot of a person sitting in front of me, and I have to ask them things. And I think what changed for me was when I was able to actually stop that inner voice of my own that actually was a bit of an inner critic, because it's like, oh, that question wasn't very good. Why did you ask that question? Well, you could have gone down there, when actually, oh, you should have totally gone down there. And that would play out in real time in my head. When I think I became a little bit more experienced, I was able to start thinking, actually, clarifying up front as much as possible with that person. You know, what does a good outcome for the next hour look like? You might not know right now, but what does a good outcome roughly look like to you from where you're sitting right now? You can get them to articulate a little bit, and sometimes they can't, and sometimes they can. That gives you an anchor. Are we heading in the right direction? Is the line of curiosity that I'm having about this person and what I'm hearing from them, is that moving us towards that outcome? And you can just have a quick mental check-in with yourself. But the best thing to do is have a check-in with the person sitting opposite you. So I would just check every now and then. Is this helpful? Is the line we're going down at the moment, is that helping you towards the outcome? Or if I notice that somebody is going off on a bit of a tangent, and that happens a lot in coaching, because that stream of consciousness and the external processing that somebody is doing in coaching can take somebody off in many, many different tangents. So it's about bringing it back as well and just checking in with that person. You seem to be wanting to spend a bit of time talking about this. It feels like that's quite tangential from where you were and where you said you wanted to be. Is that okay? How's that feeling for you? Because it might be that actually in the course of their processing, the thing that they've moved on to talking about is actually the important thing and is taking precedence for them in the conversation. So it's as well as being super curious about that person. And when I mean curious, I mean genuinely. Like, it's easy to sit and ask really good questions because that's all your brain is doing, is thinking questions, 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 and feeling very smug because you've asked a really good question. But actually, I want to lean into that person and be super curious about them and their experiences and what they're feeling. And it's actually, it becomes more of a habit the more you do it. You're leaning into that person, you're holding that space for that person. And right there in that moment, sounds a bit trite, but it is true. That's what matters in that moment, is that person's thoughts, that person's feelings, the things they're experiencing. And my role as a coach is to facilitate them in that space to do their best thinking. So it took me a while. And even now, I do have those moments, absolutely have those moments where my mind will go blank. I'm like, what on earth do I do now? And actually, in those moments, I've just learned to go, just give me one moment. And then I can take a breath and a mental breath and just think, okay, where am I going now? Where am I going to go with this? And just having that moment to think about that before just diving in with something that may or may not be relevant, I've found is super helpful. So it's about giving myself that permission as well to just say, I just need a moment.
Loads of things there. The first one, the headspace. Obviously, everyone can take 5 minutes to do whatever to like create that headspace for themselves. What do you do?
I do a bit of breathing. So I don't always get to do this, by the way, because it's just full on. Like, the world is full on and that's where we're at. And it might be that in the meeting I've just been in, a WhatsApp group has been going off, or the school have tried to ring me and I've missed a call. And in those 5 minutes, I just need to check that actually my daughter hasn't fallen off something and smashed her head. She's just lost her water bottle. And so I might go into a coaching session just like, hi. But then what I would do with my coachee is say, should we just take a breath? Let's just have a moment. Just think about what we need to step into a different headspace, different thinking space. And sometimes you might just take a couple of breaths with that person, because we're all under the cosh. We're all super busy. We are all running our lives at a ridiculous pace. So it might be just a little breath and a little reset. Have a drink, stay hydrated. I mean, that's one of the things that I'm terrible for. I will sit there for an hour and suddenly realise I haven't drunk anything in an hour. I'm like, right, let's just have a moment, get a cup of tea, take a breath. Now, let's go.
And then once you start, you've said that at the beginning, you were experiencing those moments, those thoughts where, oh, I need to ask them a really powerful question now. What's that question? Or you were saying about how you would ask a question, then in your mind you would say, oh, why did you ask that question? I should have asked this question. And then you would sort of like role play, if I asked that question, then it would like be here, like, why did I do that? And it's sort of like that criticizing bit that so you were like alluding to. And parallel to that, or like not parallel to that, but in the sort of same idea there, sometimes as a host as well, I again, you might say something and I might be like, oh, I might want to like think about this, and then I literally have to stop myself and be like, that inner voice, sharp, let me just like go back to this. Is it the same to you that sometimes you like, even now, is that sometimes you're saying, because even now it happens every now and again, I think you've said, when that happens, you just like tell it like, okay, shut up. Like, how do you block it? So that how do you like, how have you learned to block it to the best of your ability?
I don't think you ever block it. I don't think you can. I think what you learn to do is make decisions based on what you're seeing in front of you. And so you said, you know, how do you start a conversation? And for me, what I like to be able to do is, you know, around that headspace piece is ask somebody, How are you showing up today? How are you feeling? If you could describe it in one word, what would it be? Or 2 words, or 3 words, or whatever it would be. And I think that gives both of you an opportunity. It gives you the opportunity to kind of get a sense of where they're at. Are you working with somebody who's feeling irritable, frustrated, tired, happy, joyful, excited, all those things? It gives you a sense of who you're working, what you're working with in that moment. But in terms of the voice that's telling me that question was rubbish, I've now learned that actually, if the question was rubbish, go back and reframe it. So just what I've given myself permission to is to go, no, hang on, that's not how I meant to frame that question. Just give me a moment, and I'll think about it, and I'll go again. Because at the end of the day, any conversation can go off in any direction whatsoever, and I'm not there to push it down one particular rabbit hole. You know, I'm not there with a predefined outcome of my own in mind. So actually, as part of the expectation setting with the person I'm working with, I will ask them to say, you know, if it's going down a route of inquiry or a route of conversation that doesn't feel relevant or helpful, tell me. Just let me know in the moment. Actually, I'm not really sure where we're going with this. And we can rethink, we can reframe. So part of it is in the dialogue with the person I'm working with. I don't think, to be honest, anyone ever stops that little voice that goes, you didn't do that as well as you could, because we're human. And I think if I did that, if I was capable of that, then perhaps I wouldn't be able to be a professional coach, because I'd be perhaps being driven by some ego. So yeah, I would always like the person I'm working with to know that they can say to me, this actually isn't feeling helpful right now. Give them that permission to tell you that.
So you mentioned the headspace. You've mentioned now this idea of being present and listening.
Mm-hmm.
And the third thing that I picked up on was being genuinely interested
Yeah.
in the person who's sitting across from you. And you emphasize the word being genuinely interested, not
Yeah.
just interested. So what's the difference between being interested and genuinely interested?
Yeah, I mean, I can sit opposite you right now and be like, so tell me what you're doing next week, Luca. I'm interested. But actually, I really, if I was to ask you, if I was to engage in that conversation with you, it's because I want to know. I really want to know, what are you up to next week? Like, because you're doing some cool stuff, and there's loads that you've got going on that is really piques my curiosity about you and the things that you do. And I think I don't know the person sitting opposite me. There might be so many things about that person that I don't know that would be fascinating to find out about and to learn about and to learn about them. And it's not my job to unpick everything about them to assuage my own sense of curiosity. But I think by being genuinely interested in what someone's got to say and really caring about the outcome for them is super important to me. And over the years, when I started out coaching, I was like, it's a process. I have to contract with people. I have to be really clear what the expectations are. I have to start with a good question. There has to be a good middle, and there has to be a lovely wrap up and check out at the end. And over time, what I've discovered about myself in coaching is that I find as a session goes on, I'm more and more in it. And that presence becomes easy to do because the person sitting opposite me is talking to me about things that really matter to them. And they are sharing emotion with me, and they are sharing things that are important to them that perhaps they haven't shared with anybody else. They may have done, but again, I've been in conversations with people before where someone said, actually, you're the first person I've ever said this to. And for me, that is incredibly powerful. And I want to, that I don't need to try at that point. It's just genuinely fascinating to be in that space with someone, learning about them. And so when I say genuinely, it's that for me.
Let's talk a bit about these powerful questions. at the beginning, when I asked you about what do you want people to take away from this episode, one of the things you said was showing that coaching is something that can help someone achieve a transformation or enable them to make a decision or enable them to do the things that they want to do or they don't, or they might not even know they want to do, but through coaching they might get there.
Yeah.
So I guess there's two pathways we can take here. We could go down the path of talking about like the powerful questions that you as a coach are meant to ask. Or we can go down the path of, well, given this idea of enabling someone to achieve a transformation, we can talk more about that. So what do you think feels right given what you want people to take away from this?
I think that the path of transformation, and the reason for that is that I don't think anyone should ever come into coaching thinking that they have to leave with an epiphany, that it is going to be utterly life-changing. For some people, it absolutely is. But it could be just slight improvement in something that somebody has wanted to do something about for a really long time, but they haven't known how. So somebody that I worked with a few years ago, they came to me with what superficially was serious nerves and confidence when having to present to colleagues. And it would manifest in physical, like it often does for people. Often, manifests in sweating, blushing, shaking. And this person suffered all of that every time they had to stand up in front of an audience and present some work or talk about anything. They just suffered all these immediate symptoms, and they originally came with, this all happens and I want that to stop. So superficially, we could have gone, oh, there's all the, you can shake it off, you can take some deep breaths, you can do some counting backwards, anxiety management techniques, because on the surface, that's what it looked like. Like, in order to be able to stand up and present to this group of people, you need to stop sweating, you need to stop blushing, you need to stop shaking, and then it'll all be fine. And actually, when we got into the conversation, what it was those were symptoms of a deeper rooted issue. That person was actually really, really struggling with confidence and low self-esteem, and feeling like they weren't worthy, that they weren't good enough, that they just fundamentally weren't good enough to be standing up there and telling other people their opinions, their thoughts on what should or shouldn't happen about something in a project. And so we started there, and we started working on the root cause of why that person felt a lack of confidence, why they felt so unworthy. And we were able to track that back to some things that had happened, that they'd had experiences in professional setting previously that had been less than helpful, and it had just taken root. It had really embedded that every time that person got up and stood up, talked in front of an audience, that was always going to be how it played out. And so before anything had even happened, that assumption was there. It's going to be awful. And so they went into a panic. And actually, when we talked it through, the kind of audience that person was presenting to, what were they hoping for that person? What were they expecting would happen? Bit by bit, we were able to build a completely different picture. And we started doing something that actually it's something that I've taken from a course that I did a while ago, which was cognitive behavioural therapy for coaches. And there's something called avoidance exposure. And now I'm not an expert, so I'm not going to pretend to be an expert in any CBT models. But it was about helping that person to just make some small incremental changes each time they had to do the thing that really scared them. And bit by bit, over time, by the time that person actually moved on to another job elsewhere, they were standing up in front of that audience and they were able to present with no fear. And that for them was completely transformational. That was huge. For others, it might just be a 1%, just 1% at a time, and that will have a compounding effect. So it might be a more of a big bang, or it might be something really, really small, but it's still really important to that person. So I think it's really problematic, I think, when we look at coaching through the lens of it always has to be transformational, because it doesn't. It can be a really small nudge in the right direction that will still make a big difference to somebody. And certainly for me, the coaching experience that I had that made me decide actually I was going to go for it and I was going to make a career out of coaching was transformational. It was working with a coach who helped me uncover why I just kept putting it off and putting it off. So I had, in order to get a qualification such as I have, I had to do lots and lots of hours of training. I had to sit exams, and I did not want to do that. I just didn't want to do it. But I knew that if I wanted to distinguish myself and assure myself that I had done my best, then I needed to do that. And it took somebody to work with me to help me see all the reasons why I wasn't doing it, for me to be able to for me to be able to start overcoming those and trying some stuff and finding it hard, and then trying again and finding it a bit easier, and that person being alongside me in that and helping me as well in the reflection, because that's another, I think, really important part of the coaching process, is that we're not just there to talk about the forward momentum, we're there to reflect on the things that perhaps somebody has done and how that went. So if somebody has decided that they're going to take a particular course of action, they're going to go away from that coaching session and they're going to try something as a consequence of a decision they've made in that session, they can come back to a future session and figure out, how did that go? Did it go as intended? What's still missing for me? Is there something else I can do? Is there something else I'm still not seeing? Or if it went really well, why did it go so well? And how can I build on that going forward? So it's reflecting as well. So the intention to do something with reflection, in my experience, was the most powerful way of actually doing something that was, for me, really transformational.
I think I like stories like this where someone comes in with, on a surface level, I can't give a presentation because I always am feeling nervous and not confident. And as the sessions go on, as you peel more of the onion, you realize actually there's something deeper going on here.
Yes.
And then you make tiny steps towards addressing that once you've got to the root cause. And by the end of the end session, you, as the person coming in with that problem, they've made that transformation, or they've managed to find the root cause, address it, and now be in a place where they don't feel that anymore. And that's the thing that I find with coaching. That's the thing I find like the best thing ever, because you have something and you didn't know what it was, and you've got someone who is walking alongside you to help you figure it out.
As essentially that's what I do. You know, I hold a space, and I try to make that space as helpful as possible for that individual, and that will look different to everyone. So it's like you have a container, and you build that container around how that person feels most able to have a good, trusting conversation. You build that container around whatever it is that they think they want to work on. And you make sure that container is flexible enough, because sometimes the thing they wanted to work on ends up not being the thing that you work on, because they realise that there's actually something more important to them. Or the thing they thought they want to work on is actually just a symptom of something that is different. And you know, my job of asking questions, absolutely, that is a key part of my job. And that is what coaching is fundamentally built on. But for me, it is beyond asking questions. It is about being really curious about that individual. And then, if it's appropriate and if it's helpful, I can bring in different tools and techniques that will help, or I think might help that person to think in a slightly different way. But essentially, yeah, I hold a space for someone to do better thinking.
As a coach, you have your as a coach, your role seems to be, given what you're saying, is to enable that transformation. And I want to sit here and stupidly assume that over the number of years you've done this, you have helped loads and loads of people, and you've taken them from a situation where they were dealing with a problem to a place where they have now solved that problem, by and large. The things you've seen in the conversations, I would like to assume, stupidly, that sometimes there are points that are similar. So if you were to coach me, I might at some point show signs of the same thing that another one of the people you've been working with has showed at some point in the coaching conversation.
Yeah.
At which point, as a coach, do you because in my head it feels like you would have, like, you've seen it before, you know what the solution could be, but your role is not necessarily to give the solution, is to help them reach that transformation by themselves. So how do you, I guess the question I'm trying to form here, or the thing that I'm trying to say, is how do you, because you've seen so many patterns, some of them are common, so how do you look at those common patterns and say to yourself, okay, I know what's going on here, how can I now help this person achieve that?
Yeah. So I can think I might know what might be going on for someone. What I can't know is how best to resolve, how best that person might choose to resolve that thing. So, for example, if I think somebody is struggling with imposter syndrome, I might have a couple of things in my mind that might tease that out a little bit more. And I would invite, so I might offer to do an exercise with somebody that I think might speak into that. And I would invite that person to try it. So rather than, thinking, oh, we're now going to do this exercise, I'm thinking of something that might be useful here. It's this. How do you feel about trying it? And give that person the opportunity to, oh yeah, that sounds like it might be helpful. Let's give it a go. Or no, thank you, I'd rather not do that. And again, it's about asking them what's going to be helpful in that moment. And absolutely, there will be times when I'm like, it's so obvious. It's obvious to me, but I'm not them. And I think that's where the biggest difference is between a mentor and a coach, really, is that somebody who might be thinking about pursuing a career as a coach, for example, I could bang on all day about the training I had, which was absolutely brilliant and I loved it, and I can wax lyrical about it all day. It might be completely the wrong thing for that individual. And so, yeah, I think I might know what's going on. I think what might be an answer. But I still have to remind myself that just because that worked for me or is what I would do or worked for that person that I was working with yesterday, isn't going to be the right solution for the individual I'm working with today, because they are part of an entirely different ecosystem around them, and their experience is different, and the things they are thinking are different, and the way that they problem solve is completely different. So yeah, it happens, definitely do have those moments, but it's not for me to tell anyone what I think they should do. So I will find other ways to help that person in that moment think about it in a different way.
With my coach, Taryn, I said to her from like the very, I think you've mentioned a couple of times now, with coaching, you're not there to necessarily for them to walk in your shoes like a mentor, so that they can see how you've done it in the past and how they could now learn and do something similar from that. Your job is to help them uncover what works for them. And with me, I've said to my coach that from the very beginning, if you've got something to say it.
Yeah.
And I've been pushing for like as hard as I can. I was like, please say it. That would save some time.
Yeah.
Suggest every time.
Great.
And I guess that works for me.
Absolutely. And that's how it should be. It's what works for you. So she's never going to sit there without permission and go, well, I think this. What I will do in certain circumstances where somebody really is struggling, I will say to that person, I have an insight that might be helpful. Would you like me to share it? And usually the answer is yes, please. But I always caveat that with, that might not be what you need, or that might not be what you were thinking. So, hold it lightly, but I will share it with them, particularly if they ask me to. And I think, that's the difference. There's purist coaching, which is you must ask questions all the time. But actually, again, it's a conversation and we're human. And if somebody wants your insight and invites it, absolutely share it. I think that's absolutely fine.
I think we've got 10, 20 more minutes.
Okay.
What I would be interested in, if you think this is right, I would be interested in knowing. We've talked about we've talked about as a coach what you do, how you do it, how you show up, and that's been absolutely interesting. We've also talked about what that coaching transformation looks like in reality with a couple of examples you've given, and you've also talked a bit about we've talked a bit about patterns and things you've seen and how actually it's a bit different from person to person.
Yeah.
If someone what I would be looking at next is if someone doesn't have access to coaching. And as you said, coaching could enable you to achieve that transformation. How could that person be their own coach?
That's a really good question. I think in order to coach yourself, it's helpful to have been coached. Because it is about asking yourself challenging things. It is about self-reflection. And there's loads of tools out there that can help somebody find that for themselves. There are so many books and resources out there where you can learn the basics and the techniques of self-coaching. But I actually think if you have the opportunity to work with a coach, it's going to give you an extra dimension, because that person is going to ask you things you hadn't thought about. They are going to poke you to think about the things that might feel challenging. Whereas if we're good at sabotaging ourselves to start with, if we're going to try and self-coach ourselves when things feel a little bit tricky, it's like me with the gym. I have so much good intention when I go to the gym, but the minute it starts to feel a little bit, that'll do. I'm going to stop there before I start to feel even more sick. So I think, if someone has the opportunity to walk that journey with a coach, so much the better. But if they don't have access to that, I think it's about finding something really simple that works for you. So, for example, something along those lines might be a bit of journaling. So, sit down with a piece of paper and just write and see what comes out, and just go for it. Like, forget your spelling, forget your punctuation, forget grammar. Just write as your stream of consciousness comes out, and then read it back to yourself. What stands out? What have you repeated? What patterns are you seeing in what you've written? Is there something that really stands out to you that, well, that's interesting. I hadn't really thought I was that bothered about that, but now I see it on paper, maybe I am. And is that something I can do something about? Is it not something I can do something about? Is it something that is really important to me? Or is it something that is just, it's going to maybe last a couple of days? It's challenging for a couple of days, but then it'll be out of the way and it'll be okay. So it's about starting to question yourself, question your own decisions and the things you're thinking. But again, in the world that we are in, even allowing yourself the headspace to do that is really the first step. It's being cognizant of the fact that you want to do something in the first place and make a change. And I think what I'm seeing increasingly is people just don't have the headspace for it. And I think that's really sad, that we've created a world that is so full, so that there are demands on our attention all day, every day. And if you are one of those people that doom scrolls when you go to bed into the night as well, there is no bandwidth for thinking. And so I think what the first step with self-coaching is actually acknowledging that you need some space for that, and a bit of time and a bit of quiet time. And whether that's just 20 minutes with a piece of paper and a pen, or whether it's something else, then that's got to be the first step, really.
So they've done so far. Say for example, someone was to watch this episode and they would realize, yeah, what Michele here is saying is true. I doom scroll. I seem to not be able to find time to do the things I want to do. And she's saying I should maybe take 10-20 minutes and do a bit of journaling as a start, and I could write anything. Don't care about punctuation, and then read it back to myself. Okay, they've done that. And you've also mentioned a couple of questions there around, oh, what seems to be obvious? Is there anything jumping out? What's that? Why is it jumping out? So they've sort of like, they've listened to this and they've listened to what you've said, and they've asked those sort of simple questions. What next?
I think if in the absence of a coach, if you have a really good friend, somebody who will listen to you, somebody that you can say, I don't need you to give me your solutions, but I just need you to listen while I go through this. Would that be okay? But somebody that you can trust is, again, really important. When I'm delivering training, I often ask people to think about when they're talking to a friend in a pub, and you're talking about something you're both really interested in. How often are you, as that friend, waiting to jump in with your thoughts on it, your opinions? You know, someone might be in the middle of sharing something that's so cool to them that they've done. Oh yeah, when I did that, and this, and suddenly the conversation's about them. I would say if someone's listening to this who is a friend to someone or many people, be that person who just allows your friend to talk. Be that person who listens properly, like genuinely interested. And yeah, you might have something you want to share, and that's absolutely fine. You might have some burning advice you want to give. But before you jump in with that, let that person talk it out. Let them hear it for themselves, because there's actually something really powerful about articulation. And if you are vocalizing something for the first time, it's more likely that once you've moved something out of your subconscious, something that's on the periphery of your brain, and into your conscious, it might still take time, but the more likelihood is you're going to do something about it, or you're going to take some step towards some kind of action towards it. So I think on the one hand, if you are a person who is looking to coach themselves, start with giving yourself some headspace and some time. Clear the decks for 20 minutes, whatever it is. allow yourself some breaths. We don't do that very often. I mean, how often are you conscious that you're only breathing to here? You know, for a proper breath that resets the nervous system, it's a big, deep breath that you need to take and a big, long exhale. And immediately your bandwidth is going to be more. So it's some simple steps to start with, I think. Just sit quietly, take some breaths, think about what's on your mind, allow it to come out. That might be on paper, it might be a drawing. You know, some people are much better at articulating themselves visually than they are in the written word, whatever it means to you. And this is where I think coaching and mindfulness are actually really good companions, because if you can just get your mindset into a slightly different place, quieten down that voice, quieten down the chatter, quieten down the to-do list in your brain, quieten down the spaghettiness of all the different conflicting thoughts that are going on for you, have a moment and then begin. Then ask yourself a few questions. And they don't need to be deep searching questions, but just, what am I noticing right now? What am I feeling? And actually, even sometimes just getting in touch with the thing that you're feeling in your gut. Gut instinct for a reason, right? It's telling us something. That's all data. So even just sitting still and going, what am I feeling right now? That's going to be indicative of something. And just asking yourself, what's going on for me? If I could change that, how would I change it? If I could do that thing, what would that feel like? If I could get that qualification, how would I feel 6 months from now? What would that look like? And it's just, it is really starting there. Just asking yourself some really simple questions. But like I said, if you are that friend in the pub, the best advice I can give you is listen.
I had someone on the podcast who was, she has her own podcast.
She what, sorry?
She has her own podcast as well.
Yes.
And she has been doing it for a bit longer than me. And one of the things I asked her was, in your experience as a host, you've spoken with loads of people. Have you found that, in my head, I thought it was like just one perfect question you like always ask. Did you find that? She said no, it doesn't exist. As a coach, is there a question that you like asking that opens up a world of possibilities where the person in front of you can then take away, think about, and come up with an answer that will put them in a position where whatever they say, it gets them a step closer to that transformation, or a step closer to uncovering the thing that has been going on in their life?
Am I allowed two? Two questions.
Oh yeah.
I agree with
I thought that was the question. I was like,
I
what?
agree with your podcast guest that there is no perfect question, because if that's what we focused on, that's all we'd focus on. So I have to ask the most powerful question I can possibly think of. What the heck is that? Yeah, that isn't a thing. So I agree with your guest entirely. There's no perfect question. The questions that I have found to be powerful are really simple ones. And the first one is probably in every coach's toolbox, but it is, what else? Because just when someone thinks that they've seen all the possibilities, and you've talked all those through with them, by asking them, and what else, it invites them back to think again, and it invites them back to think about what they're not seeing. And just asking them, what else? And I would add to that actually the so what. So you're going to do that. So what? What is that actually going to enable you to do? If you do that thing, so what? And what that does is help somebody funnel down to the absolute heart of the matter. If I do this thing, for example, the so what is that I am going to be happier. I am going to be making more impact in a way that I think is really important. It could be anything, but you just keep keep asking until you really feel like they've reached a point at which they have got to the heart of the matter. And the other one that I really love asking, and it is particularly working with people who are throwing blockers in their own way, and that's something I work with all the time. People's limiting beliefs are so powerful. And it was the one that really changed things for me, for my perspective, was when my coach asked me, how are you going to feel when you've got your qualification? And I remember sitting there saying to them, it's going to feel amazing. It would be incredible. I would be so proud of myself. I would feel that I had done everything I could to be the best professional version of myself, and to be able to demonstrate to the people that I work with that I've been prepared to put the graft in to walk alongside them. I've earned my place walking alongside them on their coaching journey. I've put the work in, and that would feel amazing. And they were like, do you want to actually feel that? Yes, I do. Well, you know what you need to do then. And I had a good cry at that point, not going to lie, because I could feel it in myself. I could feel just how awesome it would be. And at that point, I knew I had to overcome all the things I was chucking in my own way. And that afternoon, I went off and I did all the things I'd been talking about. And I signed up to the course, and I was terrified, and I never looked back. And so for me, in my own experience, that question was the one that unlocked things for me. How are you going to feel? Feel it, and then do it. And yeah, I think the so what, the what else, and how's it going to feel when you've done it? Because if you can help someone see and feel just how good it's going to be, that's really, really powerful. And that isn't a powerful question. That's just a question. And it's a really short, little question, but had a big impact. So I banked that one there and then. That's going in my back pocket. So yeah.
Going back to the early question of what do you want people to take away from the episode, we've covered a lot. We've covered a lot of interesting things. Is there anything else that you would like to add to the message of coaching is there to help you enable that transformation? Is there anything else you would like to say to that message that you haven't said already?
Yeah, there is. And I think it's something I would invite business leaders to think very carefully about. If you own a business, if you lead a business, if you are a leader, full stop, then consider making it available. Consider making coaching available to anyone within your organisation, because aside from the fact that there are cost efficiencies within that, you know, we at Maiden, we have an internal coaching team. Those people have a day job. So they are software developers, they are people in marketing, they are product owners, there are scrum masters, you know, they come from every part of the business. But because we've created that internal program and we have the resource internally, and I do the training internally as well, there is significant cost efficiency there. You know, we could bring a coach in to work with our designated future leadership. Lovely. That's expensive. But not only that, you're then limiting it to a pool of very talented people, when actually, if you've done your recruitment well, you have got an enormous pool of talented people who can all benefit from working with coaches, with mentors. Invest in their personal development, and you will have happy, productive people, and the numbers will take care of themselves to some degree. So that would be, I think, if you want genuine transformation across your business, give people genuine opportunity to transform.
Michele, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Is there anywhere people, if you want to connect with you, how should
Yes.
they do that?
They can connect with me on LinkedIn. They can find my email address there, and they are very welcome to direct message me on LinkedIn as well, should they wish to. And particularly for people who are keen in understanding how to get going. If someone's out there thinking, if one of your listeners is out there thinking, I'd really like to do this, but I don't know how, or I'd really like to do this, but I know I'm throwing some blockers in my own way. If anything I've said about my experience resonates, then I can offer some input there. But also, I obviously put in a lot of research to find the right training provider for me, and I think that is super important. And therefore, people would find on LinkedIn links to my training provider, and I would highly recommend they go and check them out too.
I'll put your LinkedIn in the bio. Michele, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Before we actually wrap it up, I want to ask you, don't move. You came in early, so I didn't have time to actually hide it. Oh, nice. Michele, this is for you.
Oh, you didn't have to. Thank you.
You're welcome. It's the best thing you'll ever have in terms of, I think, in terms of, I'll just tell you what it is. It's a chocolate bar.
Okay.
But it's going to be the best chocolate bar you'll ever have in your life.
Am I allowed to open it?
Absolutely, yeah. You can eat as well if you'd like. I would recommend maybe putting it in the fridge.
Okay.
If it's not, hopefully it hasn't really melted.
I am very, very, very intrigued.
When the story behind it is when I was a kid. Remember when you were a kid,
Yeah.
and you would have chocolate bars.
Oh, yeah.
The same. I would have chocolate bars, and on the first bite, I would be like, "This chocolate bar does not have enough chocolate."
Yeah.
And I was like 8, 7, I don't know.
Yeah.
Fast forward to high school. One of my friends, she comes up to me and she says, "Look, have you tried this chocolate bar?" "No." "Can I have it?" "Yes." She gives me the chocolate bar, and on the first bite, I fell in love with it. It had so much chocolate, and it's been my favorite chocolate bar ever since then.
Oh, thank you so much.
You're
Well,
welcome.
my next question would be, if I love it as much as you do, how do I get more?
That, you see, I have the answer to that question finally, because we both live in Bath.
Uh-huh.
You can find it at the International Food Market,
Uh-huh.
Istanbul, it's called. And unless I go there and buy 3 boxes out of 4, you might be able to find it, because that's what I do.
You bulk buy.
Pretty much.
Well, I will pass judgment on it.
Nice.
And it looks delish. So thank you.
Absolutely. Michele, thank you again.
Thank you so much for having me on.